So in this session, we're going to discuss adding and managing formulations. Just a quick overview. So adding a formulation. So we're going to discuss item type and item class, the item code sequences and how those can be set up, exploring the composition design tool or CDT. So adding raw materials into the CDT and copying formulations from Excel. And then we're going to have a look at how we can customize our screen to help with formulating and also comparing formulations, an overview of the different tabs of a formulation, properties, printing, and then additionally we'll have a look at view previous versions of a composition, a where used report, and a global change as well. So if we go into Formpak, and there it is. Okay, so first of all, I just want to make you all aware of the support centre on the home screen. So we've got a search field here, so we can type in any information that we want into this search field. So if we just go for formulation and click enter, it'll bring up all the support articles that contain the word formulation, but you can do that with any area that you need assistance with Formpak. And also as well, we have training plans available for the different areas that you might need assistance with. So those are just located there in the training plans. So let's start by adding a new formulation. So if we type in the navigation menu, add a new formulation, it appears. But also a handy little trick. So if you type the first capitalized letter of each word, such as ANNF, dyslexic fingers, and add a new formulation appears. So for my example, we're going to use a fragrance formulation, but for other customers, it'll be set up in a different way. So I'm going to call our fragrance formulation Holiday Sunshine, which is probably something we all need a bit of right now. Okay. And then item type. So we'll come back to that shortly. So just a bit of a explanation. So flavor formulations, fragrance formulations are set up to a similar way as flavor formulations. However, candle manufacturers' formulations, they're slightly different because they consist of a base item such as a wax and a bought-in fragrance formulation. So those are added as raw materials and then added together to create a formulation. So item type. So item type contain numerous item classes. For example, item type can be a raw material and include item classes dilution and base. An item type may be a fragrance or flavor and it contain item classes, flavor formulation or fragrance formulation. So this is an easy way to separate and organize raw materials and formulations. So for this example, we're going to choose fragrance. And if we start typing fragrance, the fragrance formulation pops up and we can populate that. So the item code sequence, this can be set up automatically. So it can be assigned to codes to items such as raw materials and formulations. So each class of an item can have an individual style of item code assigned to it. So we can have item codes can be alphabetical, numeric, or they can be both. And to have a look at how item code sequences can be set up, have a look at the Formpak support page on manage item code sequences, and this gives you an idea of how the code structure can be generated. However, for this example, we'll use a manual item code sequence, and we're going to capitalize the code. So this takes into account the name of the formulation and it's easily to search for the information at the later date. So if we press caps and Holiday Sunshine, that's the name and code of our fragrance formulation. So I'll just draw your attention to the button over here on the right hand side. If we click help, you'll find this throughout Formpak. and this will give us an overview of the information required and where we can find additional information. For example, we can see this contains a link on item code sequences. So if we click on Manage Item Code Sequences, this gives us instructions of how those can be set up. So if we close that down, and then these other fields on the Formulation tab, like development job and attachments, they're related to projects, and we also have further training on projects if you want to join one of those sessions. Okay, so if I click save on this, so this now takes us to the CDT screen or composition design tool, and on this screen we have many functions which we can go through. But now we've given our fragrance a name and a code, we can start to add raw materials. So we can do this by typing the raw material name, the raw material code, the CAS number, or even an EC number. And if we select deep search, Formpak searches everything. So if we start typing Tapiniol, so Formpak will bring up all the raw materials that contain the name. So it searches the chemical name, but it also searches the common name that's contained within the raw material. So if we select Tapiniol and give it a concentration amount, and then we can either press enter, and it generates a new line. So we start typing another raw material, and it gives us a list that contains citral. We can add another concentration amount. So we can either delete the material or undo it. So undo, it gets rid of the concentration amount, undo again, and it gets rid of the material. So if we click on this, and then we can delete, and then I can demonstrate copying and pasting from Excel. Yes, I want to delete that component. So if we go into our Excel spreadsheet, so we need to have the raw material code and the concentration amount next to each other, so we can copy and paste this into the CDT. So if we copy, and then we go back into Formpak and click paste, and you might need to click off it, and then there we go. It's pasted into our CDT. So you can copy formulations from an Excel spreadsheet, and if we click and paste in the code box, the formulation appears. So we can change component parts. So if we change the concentration amount to 0 and then click off and then adjust all the component parts, we can equal the concentration amount to 100. Let's just undo that. To 100. Let's select the component, 100, and there we go. And it totals the formulation by adjusting the component parts to 100. So we've had a look at undo and delete, and we can also have a look at the history. So the history here contains all the formulation information that we've just edited, so you can go back to any point of the formulation that's required. And also it gives us the total price of the formulation. So with the total cost price, if the cost has been added to the raw materials, this will be displayed as a total cost price, which is handy when you're formulating. Okay, so we can customize our screen, so you can see these columns here, so we can add additional columns. So if we go to other menus and select customize screen, we can add as many columns as we want to. So we can add a FEMA, a GRAS, we've got our CAS number selected, so we can add a FEMA, a GRAS number, which is handy when you're formulating flavours. And we can also select if we want it to be natural, And so you can select whichever columns make it easier for you to formulate. And we can also add different applications in here and character notes. So if those are contained within the raw materials, we can add different character notes and properties. So we can add any additional properties in here. So we can add hazard codes. Maybe if we want to know if a hazard's present in the raw materials, it might be H317. So may cause an allergic skin reaction. So we can select that. And also because we're formulating a fragrance, we can add IFRA categories. So maybe IFRA category 4 for fine fragrance. And composition properties. So if we have a look at composition properties, we can add properties that look at the formulation as a whole. So if we add AG innings, this will list the cosmetic allergens for our formulation. And if we save as default, then these selections will appear every time we formulate. So for this to be calculated, we need to go into calculate now, and this will calculate for all the formulation. So if we go into calculate now, I can see up here it's calculated for the whole formulation, and it includes citral, eugenol, limonene and linalool. Okay, so this can be set up for anything you want to be aware of when formulating. It can be set up for maybe ethanol content or phthalates. And for more information on properties, then you can have a look at the support centre, or you can join one of our training sessions on properties overview. And also in the other menus, we can compare. So if we click on compare, we can compare previous versions of formulations. So if we select another fragrance, so if we select Citrus Burst, and it gives us a version as well. So we can select whatever version we want to compare with our formulation. So every time a formulation composition is modified and saved, a new version is created. So if we compare it to version 4 and then click add and compare, we can see that there's a new column here with Citrus Burst version 4, and it compares with the raw materials that we've got in our formulation. Okay, and to remove this, all we need to do is go to other menus, click compare, select it, delete, compare, and it's back to our formulation again. Okay, so now we've completed our formulation and the total concentration is 100. So we just need to save and check it in. So if we save and check in, okay, so if we don't save it properly or click interim saved, it will be saved in work in progress and other users will not be able to modify it. So let's modify this formulation and complete the rest of the information required to complete the process so we can print documents for the formulation. So if we click modify this formulation, and we can see that we've got different tabs available, and the first is key details, which includes the formulation code and the name and also the item class as well. So we can modify the item uses. So for this example, we'll add fragrance, and also we've got details of who created the formulation and when it was created. And we've got a certification tab. So if we have a look at the certification, we can see that if the formulation has got halal or kosher or organic certification, then it can be added here. So also you can add the date of certification when it was requested and when it will expire, which is really handy to have. In the classification tab, we can include character class and character notes. So if we add citrus to ours, so you can add as many character notes as you want to. So this is handy when you can use to find similar fragrances in find matching items. And we have training sessions today and tomorrow on find matching items if you want to find out more about that topic. And then on the composition tab, we can see the version number of the formulation. So this is version 1 because we haven't made any changes to the composition. And we can also see the version date and the last modifier date. In the properties tab, I'll come back to that as we need to add some additional details to the properties. Attachments. So attachments can be documents or any additional information we like. We can add that to this tab here, so such as customer brief or any analytical information. And then the documents. So this lists and records the supply of any listed documents to customers, including the composition version and the date of supply. And you can also click on the document type and view previous versions. There's nothing available yet because we haven't generated any documents for this. So the sales tab, we can see details on sampling information, exclusivity, and also sale information as well on this one. And if we go into the security tab, we can see that who has access to it. So we can modify that so who can view and who can modify. So this can also be controlled through permissions on item classes as well, who has access to modify and view. So if we go back to the properties tab, and we need to input some physical data. So Formpak looks for a flash point as it calculates for the formulation if it's flammable or not. So let's input in here the flash point of 60 for our fragrance formulation. Okay, and also we need to add a recommended use as well. So this will be included in the safety data sheet in section 1. I'll type in recommend, comes up with recommended uses, and the property code, if we start typing fragrance, use fragrance. So we just need to change that to property value equals yes. Okay, so let's calculate it now and have a look at the hazards. So the hazards are calculated from the raw materials and the physical data that we've inputted, and this will appear in section 2 of the safety data sheet. Okay. So if we have a look at the hazards, so we can see the signal word is danger, and then we've got all the pictograms here. We've got flame, exclamation, health hazard, which is the exploding chest. We've got environment, which is the dead fish. And then if we scroll down, we can see that properties determined are yes. So properties determined need to be yes to make sure that the documents for the formulation print. If it says constituent hazards are not determined, information on one of the raw materials could possibly be missing, or a flash point maybe, or recommended uses. So, or properties determined haven't been set to yes on one of the raw materials. So once all the properties are determined, Formpak knows all the information has been inputted. So this is to stop documents being generated for incomplete formulations. Okay, if we scroll back up and have a look at view composition, we can see the information that we've added from the CDTs here. And also next to it, we have the option to print the composition. So we can print the composition at a physical level, or we can print it at a regulatory level. So the physical level is the physical components that we've added, and the regulatory level is looking at the components that are contained within the raw materials. And we can also change the format as well. So for this example, we're just going to keep the physical level and we're going to print it in PDF. So if we press print, this will generate the item composition report. So we can see that it's got the raw material code, the name, and also the concentration amount. So if we close that down. Okay, so now we've completed all the details we need to for our formulation. If we click save, it's having a think. There we go, and our formulation is saved. So now let's print an SDS for the formulation. So if we start typing the smart navigation menu, print. So print a document for an item. And we input our formulation name here. And then we want to print a safety data sheet. So if we go unbanded and select print to PDF, we don't need to worry about this. So that's for poison center notification. So if we just click OK, okay, and the PDF is an SDS is generated. So this contains all the information that we've inputted into Formpak, and Formpak has very cleverly calculated from our formulation. So for more information on documents, have a look at the Formpak Support Centre or join one of the documents overview training sessions. But if we just have a quick look through the SDS to see the information that we've inputted into Formpak and where it appears on the document. So if we just scroll down, we can see that section 1, it's got product uses, fragrances, which we inputted. And then section 2 contains all the hazards that have been calculated from our raw materials in the formulation. And it gives us all the pictograms. And then section 3 contains all the hazardous components of the formulation. And then if we scroll down to section 9, we can see the flashpoint that we've inputted into Formpak. Okay, so if we close that and then we go back into our raw formulation, we view our formulation and set to populate. And if we go back into documents, we can see there that the safety data sheet that we've just generated is there for us to view. If we click print, and there we go, our safety data sheet appears. So it's been recorded. Okay, so now we've decided that we want to change our formulation. Maybe a raw material supplier can no longer supply us with the relevant raw material, so we have to add another raw material. So if we go to modify a formulation's composition, and input our fragrance, click enter, and it'll be populated. And then if we click save, this takes us back to the CDT. So if we remove orange oil bitter, because we can no longer get that from our suppliers. So if we delete and then insert and then start typing orange. Okay, we can select orange oil bitter Florida. And if we add the concentration amount and then click save and check it in. Okay. Having a think. Okay, so that's saved. So we can view previous versions of a composition. So if we start typing in the navigation menu, view previous versions, and select view previous versions of a composition and input our item, select enter, then it gives us the two versions there that we've modified. So we can select them individually and view the composition. Or if we select both of them and select compare the composition, then this will give us a comparison, and we can see there that the orange oil bitter has been replaced by the orange oil Florida. Okay, so if we come out of that, and then the next thing I want to show you is the where use report, because I think it's a really handy tool, the where use report. So a where use report is used to locate raw materials in formulations or compositions. So here we've got the option to add multiple raw materials. So we could add, for example, lilial, lyrol, or methyl salicylate, and it'll search for all those raw materials in the formulations. And we can also add a specific concentration range. But for our example, we're just going to select all, and we're going to have a look for lilial. So if we select lilial, and then it gives us the option to search just the physical and also the regulatory level as well. So if we select regulatory and we select all levels so we don't miss anything, and then press print, and this generates a report for us. So we can see in the report that it lists all the formulations that contain lilial and also the concentration amount as well. So once you know you have a substance that you need to remove or change, then we can use another handy function on Formpak, which is titled, catchy title, Global Item Composition Modification. So if we go to global, start typing global, and then it'll appear. So if we select global item modification, composition modification, okay, so you can use this to replace items which may no longer be available from your suppliers or are no longer suitable for use. They might be prohibited or maybe drug precursors. And for our example, lilial, it's soon to be classified as a substance of very high concern. So we can replace lilial with a handy replacer. So if we choose the lilial that we want to replace, and then the actual replacement item, we can click preview, and this will give us a preview of all the formulations that contain lilial and the concentration amount that it's contained within the formulation. So if we click close, and then if we click replace, it asks us if we want to continue with the global item composition modification. Yes. So that gives us a list of all the fragrances. So we can print the list and save it, or we can proceed. So if we click yes, then the lilial will be replaced with our lilial replacer. And you can do that with any raw material that you want to. Okay, so this now concludes our training session.